My name is Eleanor Vance, and for 40 years, my world was a quiet library, its silence layered with the scent of aging paper and binding glue. I was a keeper of stories, a custodian of worlds bound in leather and cloth. My own story, however, was a much simpler volume. I was the wife of Arthur, a man whose gentle presence was the sturdy spine of my life, and the mother of two children, Amelia and Thomas, whom I loved with the fierce, unquestioning devotion that seems to be the default setting for mothers of my generation. Arthur has been gone for 5 years now, and the house we built together in the quiet town of Maple Hollow often feels too large for one person. It's a sturdy New England salt box, painted a soft sage green, with a garden that Arthur meticulously planned and I have tried, with varying success, to maintain. He was the gardener, the one who understood the secret language of soil and sun. I was the one who sat on the porch swing he built, reading to him while he worked. His armchair still sits by the bay window in the living room, a worn Afghan draped over its back, waiting for a reader who will never return. I've kept it there as a quiet monument to a love that was my life's great narrative, a story of mutual respect and quiet companionship. I suppose, in a way, I was also clinging to a time when I felt my place in the world was secure, when my identity as a wife and mother felt like a source of strength, not a vulnerability. The credit card statement arrived on a Tuesday, a day that had always felt benign and unassuming. I laid it on the old oak table in the kitchen, the one Arthur and I had refinished the first year we were married. The numbers on the page didn't seem real at first, like a misprint in a book. $19,500. I ran a trembling finger down the itemized list. Each line was a small, sharp betrayal. Blossom and vine floristry, $3,800. A deposit for the Northwood Mill, the historic grist mill by the river that had been converted into a famously expensive wedding venue, $9,200. The Gilded Spoon Catering, a name that screamed extravagance, $6,500. These were the expenses for my daughter Amelia's wedding, all charged to the credit card I had added her to for emergencies 3 years ago, after a flat tire left her stranded on a dark highway. The funds were being drawn, I knew, from the reservoir of my life, my modest librarian's pension and the life insurance Arthur had left, a sum meant to be my cushion against the uncertainties of old age. Tears pricked at my eyes, hot and unwelcome. At 67, I had thought myself beyond such naive wounds. I should have understood by now that for my children, my love had become a line of credit they felt entitled to draw upon. My phone, resting on the granite countertop that was my one modern concession in the kitchen, vibrated with a soft buzz. A text from Amelia. "Hey Mom, can you grab a few things from the market for us? Liam and I are swamped with wedding stuff. Just the essentials. Thanks. You're a lifesaver." The essentials. As if I were a personal assistant. As if the nearly $20,000 of my money she had just spent without a word was a trivial matter. As if I were merely a function, a service to be utilized. I placed the phone face down, the screen dark against the cool stone, and turned back to the statement. My monthly pension was $3,200. After the mortgage, taxes, and utilities, I had maybe $500 for everything else. Paying off Amelia's wedding would take me years, perhaps a decade. It would erase the very safety net Arthur had so carefully constructed for me. The back door, which was never locked, creaked open and slammed shut. Thomas's heavy footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors of the mudroom. He'd moved back in a year ago after his startup, a bespoke dog-walking app, had predictably failed. He was 34, a man who had mastered the art of the temporary setback that seamlessly morphed into permanent dependency. "Mom, I need to borrow the car," he called from the hallway, his voice already laced with the casual entitlement that had become his primary mode of communication. "Chloe and I are going to check out that new climbing gym in Westbridge." Chloe. The 27-year-old yoga instructor he'd been dating for 6 months. She treated my home like a complimentary wellness retreat, leaving her sustainably sourced, ethically questionable herbal tea steeping in my mugs and conducting energy-cleansing rituals with burning sage that made my allergies flare. When I gently mentioned the smoke, Thomas had accused me of being inhospitable and closed off to new modalities of healing. Thomas, I called back, my voice surprisingly steady, a calm surface on a churning sea of resentment. Could you come in here for a moment, please? He appeared in the kitchen doorway, a portrait of mild irritation. His dark hair, so like Arthur's, was artfully tousled. He wore a ridiculously expensive fleece vest I'd bought him for his birthday, back when I still believed my affection could be measured in gifts. What's up? I'm kind of in a rush. I gestured with my chin towards the statement on the table. Did you know about this? His gaze flickered to the paper and then away, a subtle shift I recognized from his childhood, the same look he'd had when he'd borrowed $20 from my purse to buy a video game. Know about what? Your sister charged $19,500 to my credit card for her wedding. A beat of silence. Then a shrug that felt like a physical blow. Yeah, she mentioned she was putting some deposits on there. Look, Mom, it's just money. You've got the house, your pension. You're fine. He paused, picking at a loose thread on his sleeve. And Amelia's been under so much stress with all the planning. Just money. My security. My future. The last tangible piece of Arthur's care for me. It's a loan, he added, as if that settled it. She'll pay you back. Eventually. I stared at my son, this man-child I had raised. I had bandaged his knees, proofread his college essays, and invested a $5,000 chunk of my savings into the ill-fated dog-walking app. He now stood in my kitchen, in my house, where he paid no rent and contributed nothing but a growing pile of laundry, and dismissed my financial stability as a minor inconvenience in the face of his sister's wedding stress. A new question, sharp and sudden, formed in my mind. When is Amelia's engagement party? Thomas froze. What? The engagement party. I haven't received an invitation. I was just wondering when it is. Another pause, this one longer, freighted with the discomfort of a poorly constructed lie. Oh, that? I think it already happened. Last weekend. It was just a small thing, you know? Liam's parents and his sister. Amelia wanted to keep it intimate. Intimate. The word was a euphemism for exclusive. An event to which I, her mother, was not central enough to be invited. The lie hung in the air between us, a toxic fog. It joined 100 other small cuts, 1,000 dismissals I had absorbed in silence. The birthday dinners I learned about from a photo on social media. The family ski trip I wasn't invited on because, as Amelia had explained, it's more of a couple's thing. Mom, you'd be bored. The gallery of family photos on her wall where I was conspicuously absent. I see, I said. I folded the credit card statement with meticulous, deliberate movements. And the wedding itself? Am I considered intimate enough to attend that? Of course you're invited to the wedding, Mom, he said, his tone shifting to annoyance. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic. As if requesting inclusion in my own daughter's life was an act of melodrama. The car keys are on the hook by the door, I said, my voice quiet, almost a whisper. Please try to have it back before midnight. Thomas snatched the keys, but paused in the doorway. For a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of something in his eye. Was it guilt? A hint of apology? No. It was just an afterthought. Oh, and Chloe's probably going to stay over. We'll try to be quiet. The back door slammed again, the sound reverberating through the house. I was alone with the bill and the crushing weight of a realization that had been building for years. Somewhere along the line, in the process of being a mother, I had been rendered invisible. I had become a utility. A provider of services. An emergency fund. A house. I walked to Arthur's armchair and sank into its familiar embrace. The fabric still held the faintest scent of his pipe tobacco and the old books he loved. Outside, the evening was settling over Maple Hollow. Mrs. Gable across the street was watering her hydrangeas. The Miller children were racing their bikes down the sidewalk. It was a tableau of normal life, of families connected by threads of affection and mutual respect. And I was an exile in my own home, surrounded by the ghosts of a family that had quietly, politely, and methodically edited me out of the frame. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Amelia. Forgot to ask. The caterer needs the next deposit in 2 weeks. It's just $3,000. Arthur's life insurance should cover it, right? You're the best. Love you. Just $3,000. Arthur's life insurance should cover it. The insurance that was supposed to ensure I could live out my years with dignity, not fund her artisanal cheese platter. The safety net that was for me, for my potential illnesses, my future care, my peace of mind. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I did something I had not done in 34 years of motherhood. I deleted the message without a reply. But I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that silence was no longer enough. Silence was a form of consent. It was a quiet yes to people who had forgotten I was capable of saying no. In the gathering twilight of my living room, surrounded by the artifacts of a life that had defined me for so long, a new story began to take shape in my mind. A different narrative. If my value to my children was measured only by what I could provide, then it was time for them to learn what happened when the provision ceased. I smoothed the creased credit card statement one last time. Tomorrow, I would make some phone calls. But tonight, I would sit with the ghost of my husband and try to remember what it felt like to be loved for who I was, not for what I had. The old house settled around me with its familiar groans and sighs. And for the first time in a very long time, the silence felt less like abandonment and more like possibility. The morning light that filtered through the lace curtains in my bedroom seemed to have a new quality to it, a clarity that matched the resolve solidifying within me. I had slept deeply, a dreamless, restorative sleep that felt like my mind had finally rebooted itself. By 7 o'clock, I was showered, dressed in a crisp blouse and trousers, and sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of strong black tea and a list. My first call was to the credit card company. I need to report a series of unauthorized charges, I said to the polite young man who answered. My voice was even and firm, a librarian's voice, accustomed to stating facts clearly. My daughter has been using a card on my account without my specific permission. The representative was professional, even sympathetic. Yes, they could freeze the card immediately. Yes, a fraud investigation could be opened. He took down the details of each charge from the Northwood Mill, Blossom and Vine, the Gilded Spoon. A total of $19,500. Ma'am, I am required to inform you, he said gently, that if the investigation finds these charges to be fraudulent, it could lead to legal consequences for the card user. I understand completely, I said, and the truth was I did. Consequences were precisely the point. My second call was to my bank. I would like to revoke authorization for a user on my checking and savings accounts, I told the branch manager, a woman I knew from the library. My son, Thomas Vance. The process was swift. Within 15 minutes, the debit card Thomas had been using for his daily coffees and climbing gym memberships would be nothing more than a useless piece of plastic. My third call was to Margaret Shaw, the lawyer who had handled Arthur's estate. She was a sharp, pragmatic woman a few years younger than me, with a no-nonsense demeanor I had always appreciated. Eleanor, she said, her voice warm with surprise. It's been too long. Is everything all right? I need to revise my will, Margaret, I said. And I'd like to discuss my legal options regarding some financial improprieties. We scheduled a meeting for the following afternoon. By 9 o'clock, I was parked across the street from the Maple Hollow Elementary School, where Amelia taught 4th grade. I watched as parents ushered their children towards the brick building, a chaotic parade of brightly colored backpacks and lunchboxes. It was a scene of ordinary parental duty, a ritual I had performed myself for years. My phone began to ring. Amelia. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. On the 4th try, I answered. Mom, thank God you answered. Her voice was a frantic rush of words. Something's wrong with your credit card. The florist just called. The payment for the custom arches was declined. The card has been frozen, I said, my tone as placid as the surface of the town pond on a windless day. What? Why? Mom, the wedding is in 8 weeks. We have vendors that need their final payments. The balance for the mill is due by the end of the month. I am aware of the timeline, Amelia. A pause. I could hear her recalibrating, shifting tactics. Her voice softened, taking on the wheedling, pleading tone she had perfected as a teenager. Mom, come on. Whatever the issue is, we can fix it. Just call the company and tell them it's fine. They're legitimate charges. Are they? I asked softly, because I don't recall authorizing nearly $20,000 in wedding expenditures. You said I could use it for emergencies. The deposits were emergencies. If we didn't pay them, we would have lost our date. Your wedding, Amelia, is not my financial emergency. The silence that followed was heavy with her shock and disbelief. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head as she searched for the familiar sequence of words that would make me relent, as I always had. You're being unreasonable, she finally said, her voice hardening. This is my wedding. Your only daughter's wedding. Don't you want me to be happy? It was the question that had been my leash for 3 decades. Don't you want me to be happy? Don't you want us to succeed? Don't you love us enough? I want you to have a wedding you can afford, I replied. Like an adult. I ended the call. The phone immediately began to ring again. I turned it off and tucked it into my purse. An hour later, I was at the local hardware store, purchasing new deadbolts for my front and back doors. The man who helped me, a kindly old fellow named George who had known Arthur for years, gave me a knowing look. Sometimes a new lock is good for the soul, he said, as if he understood everything. I drove home to find Thomas's car in the driveway and the faint, cloying scent of sage wafting from the living room. They were in the kitchen. Chloe was at the counter, blending a luridly green smoothie with kale and spirulina from my refrigerator. Thomas was at the table, scrolling on his phone. Mom, finally, Thomas said, not looking up. My debit card isn't working. And Amelia's been calling you nonstop. She's totally freaking out about some wedding payment. The card isn't working because I have removed you from my accounts, I said, placing my handbag on the counter. And I am aware of Amelia's situation. Chloe turned from the blender, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows raised in alarm. Oh my God, Eleanor, you scared us. Tom thought maybe you'd had a fall or something, making all these weird financial moves. Weird financial moves. This young woman, who drank my organic almond milk and used my electricity to charge her menagerie of electronic devices, was critiquing my financial prudence. Chloe, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I need you to gather your things and leave. She let out a small, incredulous laugh. What? Why? Because this is my home, and you are a guest whose welcome has expired. Thomas finally looked up, his phone forgotten. Mom, what has gotten into you? You're acting crazy. I'm acting like a woman who owns her own home and manages her own finances, I said. I walked to the kettle and began to fill it with water. My movements were slow, deliberate. Chloe, you have 10 minutes. Chloe looked at Thomas, her eyes wide, expecting him to leap to her defense. He stood up, his jaw set in a stubborn line I knew all too well. Mom, stop this. You're embarrassing yourself. Chloe is my guest. Not any longer. This is ridiculous. Over what? Some little credit card mix-up? Amelia will pay you back. I turned to face him, the kettle in my hand. When, Thomas? When has Amelia ever paid me back for anything? The down payment on her first car? The security deposit on her apartment? The loan for her yoga teacher training that was never mentioned again. That's different. That's what parents do. No, I said softly. That's what I did. Past tense. Chloe had gone very still, her smoothie forgotten. Maybe I should go, she murmured. Yes, I agreed. You should. Thomas's face was flushing a deep, mottled red. If she leaves, I'm leaving too. The ultimatum. The weapon they had always used against me, the threat of their absence, the withdrawal of their affection. For 34 years, it would have sent a chill of fear through me. Now, I felt nothing but a strange sense of liberation. That is your choice, I said. But if you leave today, you don't get to come back when your next venture fails or your rent is due. You don't mean that. But I did, and the conviction must have been plain on my face. His bluster began to crumble. Mom, come on. Let's just talk about this. You're upset about the money, I get it. But you can't just blow up the family over a few bills. I'm not blowing up the family, Thomas. I am simply declining to be its sole financial sponsor. Chloe, to her credit, was efficient. She gathered her yoga mat, her collection of crystals, and her laptop with surprising speed. I'll wait for you in the car, she whispered to Thomas, and practically fled from the house. My son and I stood facing each other across the oak table, the same table where I had served him thousands of meals, helped him with his homework, and listened to him mourn the end of his last serious relationship. "This isn't you, Mom," he said, his voice softening as he tried a new tactic. "You're not this cold. You're the heart of this family. You hold us all together." I agreed. But a family is not a structure held up by a single pillar. It's an arch. It requires pressure from both sides to stand. My phone, which I had switched back on, buzzed with another call from Amelia. I glanced at the screen and let it ring. "She's probably hysterical right now," Thomas said, his voice accusatory. "Her wedding is falling apart." "Her wedding is not falling apart. She simply has to arrange her own financing for it." "With what?" "She's a teacher, Mom. Liam's just starting out. They don't have that kind of money. I was a librarian for 40 years, Thomas. Arthur was a history teacher. We managed to pay for our own wedding. It was different back then. Things were cheaper." "Things were cheaper," I countered, "because people lived within their means." He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face as if he were seeing a stranger. "What do you want from us?" he asked finally. It was a genuine question, and it deserved a genuine answer. What did I want? An apology? A repayment plan? No, it was something more fundamental. "I want you to grow up," I said. "I want you to take responsibility for your own lives. I want you to see me as your mother, not your safety net. And if we don't? Then you will learn what it means to live without one." He grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. "Fine. You want to be this way? Fine. But don't come crying to us when you're old and lonely, and you've pushed away the only two people on earth who give a damn about you. The only two people who give a damn about you." The casual cruelty of it was like a shard of ice in my heart. "Goodbye, Thomas," I said. He slammed the door so hard a plate rattled on the drying rack. I poured my tea, my hand perfectly steady, and drank it in the sudden, blessed silence of my kitchen. Then I went to get the new deadbolts from my car. I had work to do. By 3 o'clock, the new locks were installed. The solid, definitive click of the deadbolt sliding into place was one of the most satisfying sounds I had ever heard. I placed one new key on my keyring and the spare in my jewelry box, next to Arthur's signet ring. My meeting with Margaret was at 4. Her office, in a historic brick building downtown, smelled of old leather and lemon polish, a scent that always reminded me of the rare books room at the library. Margaret herself, with her silver hair in a neat chignon and her intelligent, discerning eyes, was a reassuring presence. "Eleanor," she said, gesturing to the plush armchair opposite her mahogany desk. "You sounded resolute on the phone. Tell me everything." I did. I laid out the whole story methodically, factually. The years of quiet financial support escalating into outright exploitation. The credit card statement. The exclusion from the engagement party. The casual entitlement of my children. Margaret listened intently, her pen scratching notes on a yellow legal pad. "And this pattern," she said when I had finished, "it's been getting worse since Arthur passed?" "Substantially," I admitted. I think they see Arthur's life insurance not as my security, but as their inheritance, just waiting to be claimed." Margaret set down her pen and steepled her fingers. "Eleanor, what you're describing has a name. It's financial elder abuse. The credit card charges alone are a very serious matter." "I don't want to press charges," I said quickly. "They're my children. I need it to stop. I need them to understand that this is not acceptable." "Understood." First, the will. My current will, drafted after Arthur's death, was simple. Everything was to be split evenly between Amelia and Thomas, with Thomas as the executor. "I want to change it completely," I told her. I want the house to be left to the Maple Hollow Historical Society, to be preserved. I want half of my remaining assets to go to the public library's literacy program. The rest can be split between Amelia and Thomas, but only after any outstanding debts to my estate are repaid in full. Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly, but she simply made a note. And the executor? You, I said. If you would be willing. I would be honored, she said. Now, about the immediate situation. The bank will handle the fraud claim, and you will likely not be held liable for those charges. But Eleanor, you must be prepared for the backlash. They will not take this quietly. As if on cue, my phone rang. Amelia. I silenced it. They've been trying all day, I said. Thomas has already moved out. He thinks you'll cave when the loneliness sets in, Margaret surmised. Will you? The question was direct and necessary. Would I? The pull of a lifetime of maternal habit was strong. It would be so easy to call them, to smooth things over, to return to the familiar, painful dynamic. But something had fundamentally shifted in me. No, I said, the word tasting of freedom. I will not. A small, approving smile touched Margaret's lips. Good. There is one more thing to consider, down the line. If the harassment continues, a restraining order is an option. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, I said. I left her office as the afternoon sun began to dip, feeling both lighter and more grounded than I had in years. I had taken back the pen. I was writing my own story again. On the way home, I stopped at the market and bought things just for me. A beautiful fillet of salmon, a small bunch of asparagus, a lemon, and a bottle of crisp Sauvignon Blanc I'd never have splurged on before. Standing in the checkout line, I realized this was, in its own way, a celebration. The house felt different when I returned. It wasn't just quiet, it was peaceful. The cloying smell of Chloe's sage was gone. Thomas's clutter, the discarded magazines, the charging cords, the perpetually half-empty mugs had vanished. I was preparing my simple, elegant dinner when there was a soft knock on my back door. Through the window, I saw my neighbor from across the street, Clara Gable, a woman my age with a magnificent hydrangea garden. We'd exchanged pleasantries for years, but never really spoken. She was holding a covered dish. I opened the door, a little cautiously. Hello, Eleanor, she said, offering a kind, slightly nervous smile. I'm Clara. I hope I'm not intruding, but I saw your son leaving with suitcases earlier, and there seemed to be some upset. She looked embarrassed. I just wanted to make sure you were all right. I'm fine, I said automatically, the lie tasting stale on my tongue. I corrected myself. Actually, that's not quite true. I'm having a very difficult day. But I'm managing. Would you like some company while you manage it? She asked, hoisting the dish. I made far too much chicken pot pie, and my waistline can't handle the leftovers. Something in her eyes said deep, knowing kindness made me open the door wider. I was just about to open a bottle of wine, I found myself saying. I'll get the glasses, Clara said, and just like that, she was in my kitchen. 40 minutes later, we were at my oak table, sharing her sublime pot pie and my celebratory wine. Clara was a widow, too. Her husband, George, had passed away 3 years ago. She had one son, a successful lawyer in Chicago who was, she said, a wonderful, dutiful boy. He calls every Sunday at 10 a.m. Sharp, she said with a wry smile. Asks a checklist of questions about my health and my finances. He means well, but sometimes I feel less like his mother and more like one of his pro bono cases. At least he calls, I murmured, and then felt a pang of guilt. Your children don't? Clara asked gently. And to this woman, this virtual stranger, I told the whole sordid story. The money, the exclusions, the casual cruelty, the wedding I was expected to fund, but not be central to. Clara listened with an empathetic stillness, her expression a mixture of sympathy and outrage on my behalf. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. And how do you feel now? She asked. Having put your foot down? Terrified, I admitted. And relieved. And terribly guilty for feeling relieved. The guilt is just a habit, Clara said with conviction. It will fade. The relief is the truth. It will grow. My phone buzzed with a text. Amelia. Mom, please call me. I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. I'm sorry if I upset you, but please don't do this to me. I showed the message to Clara. She read it, her lips pursed. Ah, the classic, I'm sorry if I upset you, she noted. Not, I'm sorry for stealing $19,000. And notice how your reasonable boundary is reframed as you doing something to her. I hadn't dissected it so clinically, but she was absolutely right. Even her apology was a form of manipulation. What would you do? I asked. What feels right in your gut, Eleanor? Not your head, not your heart. Your gut. I looked at the message, at the familiar pull of my daughter's distress. But underneath it, a new, colder current was running, a clear-eyed recognition of the pattern. The manufactured crisis, the emotional appeal, the subtle blame-shifting. I deleted the text and turned my phone off. Good for you, Clara said simply. We talked for hours about gardens and books and the strange, shared landscape of widowhood. We talked about children who grow up to see their parents as functions rather than people, and the astonishing courage it takes to choose one's own peace. When Clara left, promising to bring over some cuttings from her prize-winning roses, I felt the blossoming of something I hadn't realized I'd been missing so acutely, a friendship between equals. I was washing the wine glasses when the landline rang, a sound so rare it startled me. It was Thomas. Mom. His voice was different. The bluster was gone, replaced by a raw uncertainty. Look, maybe we started off on the wrong foot today. Chloe and I are at her place, but I wanted to call and... I don't know. Talk. I'm listening, Thomas. That debit card thing. It really messed me up. I had to borrow money from Chloe for gas. He paused, clearly expecting an offer of help. When none came, he continued. And Amelia is a complete wreck. The mill called her. If they don't get the final payment by the end of the month, she loses the booking and the deposit. That does sound stressful for her, I said neutrally. Another pause. Mom, I just don't get it. You're acting like someone we don't even know. Perhaps, I said, the thought clarifying as I spoke it, you just never took the time to know me very well. The silence on his end was profound. So what happens now? He finally asked, his voice small. We just stop being a family. We can talk whenever you like, Thomas. The lines of communication are open. But the bank of Mom is closed. I need to think, he stammered. You do that, I said gently. Take all the time you need. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen and looked at the 2 wine glasses drying by the sink. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, I was sure. But tonight, I went to bed feeling not lonely, but peacefully, wonderfully alone. The siege, as I came to think of it, began in earnest 2 days later. I awoke to find Amelia's small sedan parked at the curb and my daughter curled up on my porch swing, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and tear-streaked. It was barely dawn. I took my time. I made my tea, toasted a piece of sourdough bread, and read a chapter of my book. At 8:30, I opened the front door. Mom. Her voice was a croak. I've been here all night. We have to talk. Good morning, Amelia. You look exhausted. She staggered to her feet. I can't sleep. I can't eat. The wedding is ruined, and it's all your fault. I am not responsible for the consequences of your choices, I said, my voice gentle but unyielding. I sat in the wicker chair opposite the swing. The mill canceled your reservation, I take it? She burst into a fresh torrent of tears. Yes. They called yesterday. 2 years of planning, Mom. All down the drain. I studied my daughter, this stranger with a familiar face. At 31, she still knew how to crumple her features into a mask of childlike despair. Her fiancé, Liam, a kind and steady young man from what I'd seen, was likely blind to this side of her. What does Liam say about all this? I asked. Liam doesn't know, she hissed. I told him there was a mix-up with the venue's booking. He doesn't know about the money. He thinks it's all taken care of. Mom, please, her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. I'm begging you. Just this once. Help me fix this. Just this once. The mantra of a lifetime of manipulation. Amelia, I said, changing the subject. Tell me something. When did you decide I was no longer a part of your immediate family? When did you decide I wasn't important enough to be invited to celebrate your engagement? The question hit her like a splash of cold water. What? That's not. It wasn't like that. It was just Liam's parents and his sister. I am your mother, Amelia. The woman who raised you. By any definition, I am your immediate family. Her composure began to fray. Fine. Okay. I should have invited you. I'm sorry. But that's not the problem right now. The problem is the wedding, and you can solve it if you'll just call the credit card company and... No. The single syllable fell into the space between us with the weight of a stone. She stared at me, utterly baffled. What do you mean, no? I mean, I am not fixing this. I am not funding your wedding. I am not financing your life. I am done. You're my mother, she cried, as if this were the final, irrefutable argument. Yes, I said softly. I am. And for 31 years, I have loved you unconditionally. I have supported you, enabled you, and rescued you. And in return, you have learned to see that love not as a gift, but as an obligation. You see me not as a person, but as a function. The tears this time were different. They were hot with rage. So that's it? You're just abandoning me? You're going to let my wedding be destroyed because you're having some kind of senior citizen temper tantrum. I'm 67, Amelia. If I'm having anything, it's a late life awakening. My phone, in my pocket, vibrated with a text from Clara. Hydrangeas are blooming. Let me know if you need backup. The simple, unconditional support of it strengthened my resolve. I need you to leave my property now, I told my daughter. You are welcome to return when you are ready to have a conversation as one adult to another. An adult conversation, she shrieked, her voice cracking. You want adult? Fine. Here's adult for you. You're a bitter, lonely old woman, and you're driving away the only people who care about you. You're going to die all alone in this house, and it will be no one's fault but your own. The words were designed to strike at my deepest fears, to weaponize Arthur's absence and my own quiet grief against me. A year ago, they would have shattered me. Now, they simply revealed the depths of her desperation. Goodbye, Amelia, I said, and walked back into my house. I closed the door, and for the first time in my life against my own child, I turned the deadbolt. She pounded on the door for a few minutes, her cries shifting from rage to pleading and back again. Finally, I heard her car door slam and the engine roar to life. The silence that descended was profound. The cavalry, as Margaret had predicted, began arriving that afternoon. First, Liam, Amelia's fiancé. He looked distraught when I opened the door. Mrs. Vance, he said, his voice strained. I am so sorry. This I hadn't expected. For what, Liam? I had no idea. Amelia told me you generously offered to help with some of the bigger deposits as a wedding gift. I never would have allowed it if I'd known she was just charging things to your card. I just found out the truth this morning. Here, at last, was a glimmer of decency. Here was accountability. Come in, Liam, I said. Let's talk. He sat on the edge of Arthur's armchair, looking miserable. He explained that Amelia had been managing all the wedding finances, brushing off his offers to contribute more from his savings by saying everything was handled. He was horrified by the deception, but more than that, he was hurt. I'm starting to see things, he trailed off. The way she talks about you sometimes, like you're just supposed to fix everything. I asked her why you weren't at the engagement party. She told me you had another commitment that weekend. He looked me in the eye. That wasn't true, was it? No, Liam. It wasn't. He buried his face in his hands. I don't know what to do. I love her, but how do you build a life with someone you can't trust with the truth? Or with money? Or with their own mother? That, I said gently, is a question only you can answer. He left an hour later, looking like a man whose world had been shaken to its foundations. That evening, as Clara and I were sharing a pot of tea on my porch, Thomas called. Mom, this has gone on long enough, he began, his voice tight with anger. You've upset Amelia. You've dragged Liam into it. You're tearing this family apart over a little bit of money. I'm not tearing anything apart, Thomas. I am simply refusing to continue holding it together all by myself with my checkbook. We're thinking of getting a lawyer, he blustered. We could have you declared incompetent. Making irrational financial decisions, alienating your family. It's a clear sign of cognitive decline. Clara, who could hear his raised voice, rolled her eyes and mouthed the word amateur. Thomas, I said, my voice as calm as a summer lake. I have already met with my lawyer, Margaret Shaw. I have revised my will and all my legal directives. My financial decisions have been rational, documented, and are designed to protect my assets from precisely this kind of exploitation. If you would like to challenge my competency in court, you are welcome to try. Margaret would be delighted to hear from you. The silence on the other end of the line was long and deeply satisfying. This isn't over, he finally managed to say. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. When I hung up, Clara reached over and patted my hand. How are you holding up? Like I'm standing on a precipice, I admitted. But the view is astonishing. 3 weeks later, I was on my knees in the garden, weeding the rose bushes, when Liam's car pulled into the driveway. The intervening time had been a revelation. A quiet, steady rhythm had established itself in my life, punctuated by coffee with Clara, volunteering at the library's adult literacy program, and the simple, grounding work of tending my garden. The credit card company had reversed all the charges, closing the fraud investigation with a stern warning letter sent to Amelia. Liam looked thinner, and a new maturity had settled in his eyes. He carried a white envelope. The wedding is off, he said, sitting beside me on the porch steps. I'm sorry to hear that, Liam. Are you? He asked, not unkindly. I thought for a moment. I'm sorry you've been hurt, I said honestly. But I'm not sorry that you found out who she was before you married her. He nodded. That's what I figured. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $9,750. Exactly half of the fraudulent charges. Liam, I can't take this. The credit card company erased the debt. Yes, you can, he said firmly. It's a matter of principle. It was for my wedding, too. My integrity is worth more than this. Consider it a repayment for the emotional distress. I looked at the check, then at this honorable young man. What will you do now? I'm moving to Colorado for a job I was offered a while back. A fresh start. He stood up to leave. Thank you, Eleanor, for showing me the truth, even though it was hard. After he left, I held the check in my hand. It wasn't just money. It was validation. It was respect. That evening, another car pulled up. Amelia got out. She looked haggard. Mom, she said, stopping at the foot of the steps. I need to come home. No, Amelia. What do you mean no? I have nowhere to go. Liam's gone. I can't afford my apartment alone. You are 31 years old. You have a master's degree and a career. You have options. You just don't like them. So you're just going to let me be homeless? You are not homeless, you are inconvenienced. There is a significant difference. Her face crumpled. What do you want from me? An apology? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I used the card. I'm sorry I didn't invite you to the party. I'm sorry for what I said. Is that what you want to hear? The words were there, but the heart was not. It was a recitation. I don't want to hear anything, Amelia, I said, my voice full of a sorrow that surprised me. I want you to understand. I want you to feel remorse, not just regret for the consequences. I want you to look at me and see a person you hurt, not a problem you failed to solve. She stared at me, her mouth slightly agape, the distinction utterly lost on her. For the first time, I saw the true chasm between us. It wasn't about money or weddings. It was about a fundamental lack of empathy. I don't know how to do that, she whispered. I know, I said. And in that moment, I let go of the daughter I had wished for and accepted the one I had. Perhaps someday you'll learn. She turned and walked back to her car, a solitary figure in the twilight. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a deep, aching sadness, but also a profound peace. The battle was over because I had refused to keep fighting it. A few days later, Thomas called. Zoe told me what happened, he said, his voice quiet, stripped of its usual bravado. Mom, what if we tried to change? What if we actually, paid you back and treated you better? It was the first crack in the wall of their entitlement. Change is not something you prove to me, Thomas, I said. It's something you do for yourselves. When you become the kind of people who don't have to ask that question, then we can talk. I hung up the phone and looked out the bay window from Arthur's chair. The late afternoon sun slanted across the lawn, making the green impossibly vibrant. My life was quiet now, but it was not empty. It was filled with the scent of blooming roses, the warmth of a new friendship, the satisfaction of meaningful work, and the steady, reliable comfort of my own self-respect. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. Tea at 4? I'll bring scones. I smiled and typed back a reply. Looking forward to it. And I was. I was looking forward to my future, a future I was now writing for myself, one peaceful day at a time. The house was no longer a monument to the past, but the headquarters for my new beginning. The silence was not an absence, but a space waiting to be filled with my own choices, my own laughter, my own life. And it was more than enough.